Guys, McMullen and McDonald. We are joined by one of our illustrious commentary commenters, our co-workers, our guys that we like hanging out with. He works with John McMullen in the press box down on Sundays at Lincoln Financial Field. He works with my buddy Glenn Macnow on Saturdays on WIP. Mike Sielski joins us here on Birds 365. Mr. Sielski, here's where I want to start. Tough question to begin. Is there a coaching staff advantage in this matchup? Entire staffs, not just head coach, but the Eagles staff against the 49ers staff. Do you think one has an edge over the other?
I'm not sure about that, Jody. It's a very intriguing matchup up and down the board, and the coaching staffs are one of the reasons it's so intriguing. We know the 49ers are kind of a unique team on offense in that basically you can take virtually any quarterback and put him into Kyle Shanahan's offense, and the offense can, generally speaking, run fairly well, and that's a testament to Shanahan. We also know that DeMeco Ryans is, 95% certain going to be a head coach once the 49ers season ends, because he's been that good defensively, and we've seen what Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon have done all season, and that doesn't even get into special teams and position coaches and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure there is an advantage. I call it a push.
If it is a push, Mike, the disrespect people show to Philadelphia. Nick Sirianni's not up on the list for Coach of the Year, but Kyle Shanahan is. What do you make of all the and Hassan Reddick and everybody else and the disrespect shown for the city of Philadelphia?
Yeah, look, John, it is in our DNA as if you're an Eagles fan to play this card, or if you're a Sixers fan or a Phillies fan. Philadelphia is always being disrespected, and I don't think this is necessarily anything more other than an acknowledgement that Howie Roseman may have had the offseason of his life. In terms of building this roster, and that the Eagles themselves, did a lot of great things, whether you're talking about Jalen Hurts' development, how much of that goes on the coaching staff, how much of that goes on Hurts himself, the acquisitions we've talked about, the improvements that certain players have made, all of that. So is Philadelphia getting dissed, so to speak? I think in a situation like this, John, I think most Eagles fans want to hear that the Eagles are awesome, that they blew out the Giants, and that we, meaning the analysts who appear each day on ESPN and Fox Sports and talk radio stations around the country and online and all of that, believe that the Eagles will destroy the 49ers. That's kind of what I think people want to hear. It doesn't necessarily make it true, but I think that's what people want to hear.
And shame on those Associated Press voters who gave Howie Roseman Executive of the Year yesterday. Where's the disrespect? We need the disrespect. We feed off the disrespect. We don't need Howie Roseman winning any stinking awards. We need
real quick
underdog role.
That was the Pro Football Writers.
Right.
So,
Pro Football Writers. Thank you for the correction.
The people who actually know, Jody. The people who know.
And Howie is the Executive of the Year. They got it right. We all got it right. He was the Executive of the Year. So, it's interesting from the standpoint, and I say that tongue in cheek, Mike. I mean, Philadelphia's not disrespected, but I will say with Nick Sirianni, and, there's a little bit of this sort of new age, back in the old days, I always say you had Tom Landry, you had a suit, the top hat, you had Bud Grant, the stoic. There was sort of a decorum to being a head coach in the National Football League. And here you have Nick Sirianni, celebrating on the sidelines like he's a player, like he's Justin Jefferson doing the gritty, sticking it in other people's faces. So he's really popular here, obviously. Outside the city limits or the Delaware Valley, not so much. Do you think that plays into it?
Yeah, I think it probably does. And I think there's something to that. Look, I understand that Nick is being who Nick is. But I have to admit, I don't love that he is so demonstrative and in your face on the sidelines. And it goes beyond just that. It'd be one thing if he were reacting in a particular way after every Eagles touchdown or big play. It goes a little bit beyond that. It goes to standing on a bench after the win in Indianapolis and gesturing and gesticulating to fans because the Eagles beat the team that just fired his mentor, Frank Reich. It's sprinting up and down the sidelines after Devonta Smith catches a touchdown in the first game against the Giants this season. It's a little bit of that. It kind of shows me that there is something to be said for the idea that he probably has to mature emotionally a little bit. But that's different from saying he doesn't know what he's doing or can't design an offense or doesn't motivate his guys, because clearly he does all those things. And he's done a terrific job this season. I personally would just like to see him kind of rein himself in a little bit in those moments. I grew up in the Buddy Ryan era too, John, and I didn't love Buddy for some of the things that he would say away from the field and things like that. There's still a part of me that is like, quell all that until you've actually done it. That it does kind of rub me the wrong way.
The Barry Sanders hand the football to the referee.
It's
in there because it looked like you've been there before.
A little bit, Jody, but I would have less of a problem with Nick if they had already won a Super Bowl, right? Like, they haven't yet. And while I understand that he's kind of a hot-blooded guy and he's going to react that way, to me, there is something to be said for, hey, you ain't done it yet, so cool your jets.
Hear you. All right, with this matchup between the 49ers and the Eagles, I said this to John for a segment. I really am feeling that this is going to come down to whoever makes the one big defensive play or the one big offensive mistake. That a key turnover in the second half is going to turn this game. And the Eagles have been pretty damn good at it all year. They're number 3 in the league in the NFL in the plus-minus category. Unfortunately, the 49ers are number 1 at plus 13. Is it that simple? We see the matchup. We read the matchups. The Eagles offensive line against the 49er defense line. Eagles secondary against Brock Purdy. Is it all going to come down to who makes the big mistake or who makes the big defensive play?
Jody, it's funny you say this because I was thinking exactly the same thing this morning before I came on with you guys. It occurred to me that one of the most under-discussed aspects specifically about the Cowboys 49ers game, we've talked about Dak Prescott in the main, right? He didn't come up big in this game. And is he the kind of quarterback who can lead the Cowboys to where they want to go because they're paying him so much money and blah, blah, blah. The 49ers scored 17 points in that game against the Dallas defense, correct me if I'm wrong, without committing a turnover. The Cowboys scored what? 13, 12, I think. What was the final score? I'm drawing a blank.
What was the final score?
It was a touchdown, 17-10.
17, okay.
All right, whatever it was, sorry. And Dak threw 19-12, there you go, excuse me. And Dak threw 2 interceptions that were absolutely crippling to the Cowboys, where they were moving and were in position to score. So that's Dak. That was Dak this season. Dak was throwing the ball to the other team a lot.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts doesn't do that or hasn't done it. So it would take a real break from the player Hurts has been and the team the Eagles generally have been this season for them not to be at least right there with the 49ers. And if they can do that, if they can play the kind of football they were playing earlier this season, and if Hurts can play the kind of football that he has played all season, I think that's a huge factor in this game, and I think it gives the Eagles an edge. The 49ers really didn't make any mistakes. You can look at throws that Purdy made and say, Diggs should have intercepted this one or that one, but they didn't,
Yeah.
If the Eagles can make those plays and keep from making them themselves, they should be in good shape.
Yeah, I think it's always about, because if you think of it, it works both ways, Mike, because Dak, late in the game, he had a pick 6 on just handed it to Dre Greenlaw, dropped it. So all of a sudden that 19-12 could be 26, and it looks like a more lopsided game. But I do think you're right. If you think about Brock Purdy against Seattle, against Dallas, especially in the first half, he gave those defenses opportunities to make plays. They didn't make them. So if the Eagles get 2 or 3 chances to make those plays defensively, they have to make those plays. It can't be, Darius Slay putting his hands up to his helmet because he dropped an interception. They have to make those plays, because the one thing Kyle Shanahan has proven, he can win games in unique fashions. He did it in the NFC Championship game a couple years ago. He threw the ball 8 times. 8 times. The playoff game against Green Bay, they're getting outplayed, but they keep it close. They win on a special teams play. The smaller margin of error is on the 49ers side. You agree with that?
I do. I do agree with that. One of the things that makes Shanahan's offense go is the thing that's similar to what makes the Eagles offense go, is that at the start of the game, you presume they can do many different things, right? Part of the reason that they could have Jimmy Garoppolo throw 8 passes in that NFC Championship game a couple of years ago is because they boat raced the Packers in the first half. They got out to such a big lead running the ball that they didn't need to throw it. And the reason that works is because at least early in a game, there's always the potential that they could throw it if Shanahan wants to.
Yeah.
You know, if the Eagles are able to take that away early on, that's going to be a key to everything, right? Purdy really hasn't been put in a position yet where he has to throw the ball to win a game. And the Eagles kind of have to do whatever they have to do to put him in that position. And, you know, the same thing happened 5 years ago. There's been a lot of discussion about the 2017-18 NFC Championship game where the Eagles played the Vikings. And I think a similar dynamic is in play once Patrick Robinson, to your point, John, about, you know, taking advantage of opportunities, which once Patrick Robinson intercepted that Case Keenum pass and returned it for the touchdown, the entire game shifted. You know, the environment became much more difficult for the Vikings to function in. And then the Eagles got juiced and they get out to a lead, and all of a sudden the Vikings can't run the ball. And it's like, okay, well, is Case Keenum really going to lead a comeback against the Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field? And I think the same dynamic is in play here. You know, Brock Purdy, I would think, is not going to be the kind of guy who, if the 49ers are down 17-7, 20-7, is going to throw them back into the game. He's just not. Or at least he hasn't proven to be that guy so far. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he is the second coming of Tom Brady. But I would think that, you know, the first quarter and a half are going to tell the tale of what happens Sunday.
Here's one thing that does scare me a little bit coming into the game from an Eagle perspective, Mike. And this is something you can say about every game, but more so when you're talking about a game against the 49ers. If the team that tackles better is going to win the game, I hate to say it, but I think it's advantage San Francisco. There's a reason they were the number 1 defense. They're the best tackling team. Against Dallas on Sunday, I was absolutely impressed with some of the tackles that they made in space, bringing guys down, not needing someone else to lend them a helping hand. The Eagles are a good tackling team. They're a very good tackling team, but they're not as good as the 49ers in my estimation. Am I oversimplifying this by saying the team that tackles best wins?
No, I'm not sure about that, Jody. I'm not sure you're simplifying it, I should say. I think it's one of the reasons to think that this is going to be a close game. The one NFC Championship game in NFL history that I keep thinking back to in this context is the one in 1999-2000 between the Rams and the Tampa Bay Bucks. I know that's a deep hole, a deep cut. But if you think about that game, that was the Rams when they were in their first season of the greatest show on turf. And they ended up, you know, winning the Super Bowl that year. It was Kurt Warner's first year as their starter, Dick Vermeil, all of that stuff. And the Buccaneers were Tony Dungy. They were an incredibly great defense, but they were Sean King at quarterback. And that was a nip and tuck game. That was a 6-5 game until Kurt Warner hit Ricky Prohl in the end zone late in the game. After the Rams had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to try to put points on the board and struggled to do that. The reason I draw that comparison is the Eagles, they may not be as good as the greatest show on turf, but they have a similarly diverse kind of offense. They can beat you in any number of different ways, the way that Rams team could.
Yeah.
And this 49ers defense is really, really good. And, you know, this Eagles team has been in games where they haven't put up a ton of points. They struggled to beat the Colts in Indianapolis. You know, they didn't blow the Vikings out. You know, it was a 24-7 game and or whatever it was, 24-8. And it wasn't that close. It wasn't like the Eagles kept pouring it on in the second half. So
Arizona, there have
been games where they just kind of needed to slog their way through it. And this may be one of those games if they're going to win it.
And oh, by the way, it's funny that you bring that game up because I've drawn a comparison between Brock Purdy and Kurt Warner, because I remember 1999 and people say, oh, at some point, this Kurt Warner guy's going to turn back into a pumpkin. This can't continue. He was in the friggin' Arena League. How the hell is he going to the... And he did. He took them all the way to the championship. So we have to hope that Brock Purdy isn't Kurt Warner in the same season some 23 years later. All right, Mike, are the Eagles going to run the football down the 49ers' throats the way they did last week against the Giants?
I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, Jody. I would be surprised if they tried early on, too. I mean, we saw that at least initially in the Giants game. They felt like they had an advantage along the line of scrimmage pretty much everywhere. First play of the game, handoff to Miles Sanders. And then they come back and hit Devonta Smith deep on the second play, and they're off and running. Can they do that against the 49ers? That's what this game is going to come down to, I think. It's who do you like more? Do you like the Eagles' offensive line, or do you like the 49ers' defensive line and linebackers? And to me, that's the question, on that side of the ball, is whether Sirianni and Shane Steichen are going to say right off the jump, we're going to try to throw the ball against the 49ers corners, or we're going to try to set them up. And I think that's an interesting way to look at the Eagles' first possession of this game. I just do.
For the first time, Mike, we saw a little bit, I don't want to say diva-like behavior from A.J. Brown, but it was pretty clear he wasn't happy that he wasn't more involved in the offense against the Giants. Didn't need to be. They ran for 268 yards. We know about receivers in general, certainly in this town, everywhere in the NFL. A.J. Brown hasn't been that. But, there's a little tweaking, I think, of the coaching staff. Hey, get me the ball. I'm pretty good. Does that turn into a problem? Do the Eagles feel they need to get A.J. Brown the ball a little bit more? And does that affect Shane Steichen's mentality of I'm just going to do what I need to do to win this football game?
Honestly, John, I think they would do well to get him the ball in this game anyway. And it's not because he was complaining Saturday night. I think it's because this game is going to come down to, in so many ways, just individual matchups. Just Jalen Hurts throws the ball deep to A.J. Brown. And does A.J. Brown, being one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL and maybe the most physical receiver in the NFL, outbox the cornerback who's defending him for the ball? I think this game could come down to plays like that. Does Jalen Hurts break a tackle or two, does his shoulder sprain and make a play? Does Deebo Samuel do something extraordinary with the ball in his hands? Does Nick Bosa get the better of Lane Johnson on one play and force a fumble, or
Mike,
force a hurried pass that leads to an interception?
You're talking about individual matchups. You wrote about Lane this week, so everybody should check that out at Inquirer.com. Lane Johnson versus Nick Bosa, and it's going to be Jordan Mailata as well, because he moves around. But I've made this comparison. When Lane is on the field, the Eagles generally play really well. When he's not on the field, they generally don't win. The numbers are kind of striking. Ever since Nick Bosa got to San Francisco as a rookie, they go to the Super Bowl. He's unblockable in the playoffs. I think he had 4 sacks. His second year, he tore his ACL in the second game. Season over. 49ers have a bad season. He comes back. They go to the championship game again. He's unblockable in the playoffs. They're a Jaworski interception away from going back to the Super Bowl. And here they are in his 4th year in the championship game again. He's healthy. Nick Bosa versus Lane Johnson. Lane hasn't given up a sack since, I joke, 1933 when the Eagles were their first season. Nick Bosa, I just talked about his dominance and what he's done for the 49ers. And Lane's not 100%. Who wins that matchup?
Man, it's like King Kong versus Godzilla. It's great. Who wins that matchup? Man, I think that's an area. I hate to bet against Lane Johnson,
I know.
but Bosa's healthier than Lane is, and I think it's a concern. I do. I don't take that as a shot at Lane. Don't take that to mean that Nick Bosa is going to get 3 sacks and embarrass Lane Johnson. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it's just the nature of an offensive tackle against a defensive end. The defensive end only has to beat him once, and it could ruin everything. And so I think the game may come down to something like that. I think it's going to be these individual matchups. I think we can talk scheme all we want. It is going to be, can Jalen Hurts, get the ball to A.J. Brown, and does A.J. Brown make an incredible play? Does Nick Bosa get to Jalen Hurts and force a fumble or force a bad throw that leads to an interception? I think it's just going to come down to stuff like that.
And, oh, by the way, this year, John mentioned how good Bosa was in the 2 previous steep runs the 49ers had in the playoffs. Hasn't had a sack in either game.
That's true.
Maybe this is a great regular season, but a little bit of a down season, off season for Nick Bosa. All right, let me ask you about the matchup of the wide receivers here in this game. Deebo Samuel is the most unique player. A.J. Brown might be the best player, but Deebo is the most unique player. But he comes in off rest. 49ers rested him. Yesterday, they rested Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey. 3 of their key offensive weapons, all limited participation yesterday in practice. Isn't it nice for the other team to have to worry about what level of player is going to be able to play at when all of Eagle Nation had to worry, at least I did, worry about Lane Johnson and Jalen Hurts last week? The shoe seems to be on the other foot here, Mike.
Yeah, it does. And like everything else we've talked about, Jody, I think it leads to some curiosity on my part about how the 49ers are going to attack the Eagles defense and Jonathan Gannon's defense early in this game. Because as we've seen for most of the season, the Eagles do struggle. There is kind of like the Eagles defense has been terrific all year, but if you're the center of that defense is like the soft, creamy center of a Twinkie, right? Like, and that's a bad analogy because I don't mean to suggest that the Eagles defense has been soft all year, because it hasn't. But if it does have a soft target, it's the middle of that area. It's the linebackers. It's attacking the middle of the field against them. And the 49ers have players who can do that, whether you're talking about Samuel or McCaffrey or, of course, George Kittle. And it looks like Purdy seems to like to throw the ball to the middle of the field. So I think your point is well taken. If those guys, particularly McCaffrey and Samuel, aren't particularly healthy and they're going to struggle to do what they usually do, that obviously helps the Eagles because it helps shore up an area where you would think they might struggle a little bit defensively.
All right, last one from me, Mike, and before I give it to you, I want to mention the 3rd anniversary of Kobe Bryant's death in Mike's book, The Rise, Kobe Bryant and the Pursuit of Immortality. So everybody should get that, and especially, at this time of year, unfortunately, the rise of KobeBook.com. So I wanted to give you that plug.
Thanks, John.
But I want to take it back to the Eagles and obviously this game. Did you guys see back in the day when Jason Kelce was on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia after the Eagles won the 2018 Super Bowl? There was a funny little back and forth, and one of the characters was dreaming, and Jason was telling him everything matters from a fan perspective. Everything helps us if you wear the jersey and your favorite pair of socks. Obviously, that part of it's nonsense. But rookie quarterback in this environment, how important are the fans in the stands to winning this game for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Look, John, I took a lot of heat ahead of the Eagles-Falcons playoff game and during that postseason Super Bowl run, in which I said that the home field advantage the Eagles have at Lincoln Financial Field was overstated. And I stand by that column only because every team has home field advantage. So relative to other teams, the advantage that the Eagles had at Lincoln Financial Field wasn't as great, okay? Now, having said that, if there were ever a game where fans would be able to make a difference, you would think it would be this one, for the very reason you said. That Brock Purdy, I know we can hear a lot about him playing in hostile environments in the Big 12 and going to Oklahoma and different places around that league to go face hostile crowds. I think Philly will be different. I think this setting will be different, in particular because he hasn't faced anything like it in the NFL yet. And I think, as I said, if there's ever a game where having home field advantage would be a boon to the Eagles, this would seem to be it. You know, everybody felt that way I was there for the 2003 championship game with the Buccaneers and the Eagles, where they were it was the last game at the Vet. And in retrospect, you can look back and say, you know what? The Buccaneers were primed to play well in that game. They had a veteran team. They had a veteran quarterback in Brad Johnson. They were not the kind of team with the kind of players who would get rattled.
Yeah.
I don't know that about Brock Purdy yet. I just don't know. So let's see. I think it's going to be a great environment. And I will say this, John, and I'm about to sit down and write a column arguing this too. This game ought to be an example to the NFL of why its idea of taking the championship games and moving them to neutral sites should be killed with fire. Okay. This is such a bad idea. I know it's a money grab.
Yeah.
I know they want to turn these championship games into diet Super Bowls and sell naming rights and test drive locations for Super Bowls.
Intuit TurboTax. Let's give them a free plug.
Exactly.
Sponsoring the championship game.
But take Eagles fans out of this. If you are just a football fan without any rooting interest in this game, one of the fun aspects of watching this game is going to be watching it at Lincoln Financial Field to see how the Eagles home fans react and what they do. The setting matters. If we learned nothing about pro sports, when it came back during the pandemic, it was that sterile sites without fans made the games less interesting.
Yeah.
One thing that I think has been overstated a little bit is, or maybe understated, excuse me. Mike, what's the loudest outdoor stadium in the NFL?
Seattle is generally considered that, I think, right?
Yeah. Arrowhead or Seattle, I would say. Maybe there's a debate.
And although he's only played 2 road games, one of the games that Brock Purdy's played on the road is in Seattle. So it isn't like he's never faced what he's faced with the Eagles before. Maybe a little bit more venom here in Philadelphia. But if you're just talking pure volume, he's already played against the 12th man in Seattle. And he did walk away with a win.
Real quick anecdote, Jody. I spent a few days last week down in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm working on a piece for the Inquirer about Trey Turner, who the Phillies signed and who played college ball in North Carolina State. And I talked to his best friend, who's a coach at North Carolina, a guy named Brett Austin, who was for 2 years the bullpen catcher of the Washington Nationals while Turner was on the team. And he said he's never heard fans MF a bullpen catcher before until he went to Citizens Bank Park. So take that and apply that to what Purdy is going to face from Eagles fans at Lincoln Financial Field, and you have a pretty good sense of what's ahead of him, I think, and the difference between what happens at the Link versus what happens in Seattle or Kansas City.
Understood. That's why I said maybe a little more venom this week in Philadelphia. But the volume he's already dealt with, and he dealt with okay in Seattle. All right, Mike, before we let you run, are you ready to go on the record and let us know whether Monday's Birds 365 is going to be a funeral dirge or a happy recap?
Well, all right. So here's the thing, guys. My wife and 4 other couples, dear friends of ours, are all going to the Poconos this weekend for a getaway. And we had this plan for a while. And I can't go because I'm going to stay home and I have to work Saturday with Glenn on the radio, and I have to cover the game, obviously, on Sunday. So the Eagles need to win this game to make this weekend worthwhile for me staying home. So I do have a rooting interest here. I'm going to be really angry if they don't win and don't go to the Super Bowl and basically cause me to waste this weekend. So maybe this pick is colored by that, but I say Eagles 20, 49ers 17.
Okay, so a relatively low-scoring game. And oh, by the way, it's a good thing your wife didn't reschedule for 2 weeks down the road, because you're going to be busy 2 weeks down the road. You're going to be in Arizona 2 weeks from now.
Well, Judy, I'm going to be in Arizona anyway, as it turns out. So I'm going whether the 49ers win this game or the Eagles. But, selfishly, I would really love to be hanging out with my friends in the Poconos this weekend. So
now there's no chance of your wife being that savvy that she knew the Eagles were that good they'd be in this spot. She have a week away from Mike Sielski.
Oh, McMullen shot on
John. No chance. I mean, don't get me wrong. She wouldn't mind the weekend away from me, but there's no chance that she planned this way. She knows who Jason Kelsey and Jalen Hurts are, and that's it when it comes to the
like
Eagles.
my wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
She does not care.
All right.
Same.
So I feel your pain.
Mike, have a good show with Glenn tomorrow. Enjoy the game on Sunday. We'll be reading you every day in the Inquirer. Thanks for jumping in with us today.
Anytime, guys. Thanks.
Thanks,
That's
Mike.
Mike Sielski, lead sports columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Dodging a bullet, not having to go away. Sounds like he wanted to go away, truthfully. But
yeah, he did. He sounded like he wanted to go away. So he's not the one dodging the bullet.
Right. Not something that he's going to be bemoaning the whole time he's watching the Eagle game on Sunday. All right, Johnny Mac, we've broken it down several different ways so far. Key matchups, the Eagles with the home field advantage. Shanahan, can he do both the head coach thing and the clock management thing at the same time? Yeah, at times it has gotten away from him. That's not going to change this week. Will it be something that the Eagles have to deal with either at the end of the first half or at the end of the game? What is going to be the key aspect, the reason that you're going to lean toward either the 49ers and where they have a plus in the column, or toward the Eagles where you say this is the reason why they're going on to the Super Bowl?
You know, I think it's going to be a close game. I'm with Mike. He had it at 2017. I think it's going to be a one-score game late. I don't think they're going to boat race. The 49ers are too solid defensively. I think, you know, Kyle Shanahan's smart enough to scheme up some stuff to keep them in the game. You know, and I've been debating and going back and forth, you know, this, Jody, all week, because I picked the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl in the preseason. And I'm like, I want to stick with it. I want to stick with it because, you know, I want to be right. I'm a human being, human nature. You want to be right. But that's silly. I mean, the Eagles are set up, and I've talked about this path for a long time. When you're talking about a potential route to the Super Bowl, it doesn't get any easier than what the Eagles have set up for themselves with the New York Giants. Not their fault they upset Minnesota, but that team wasn't ready to be in the playoffs at that position, and they destroyed them. And now we talk about the 49ers, a great team, but they're down to a third-string rookie quarterback who hasn't been in this type of situation before. You know, Mike talked about some of the differences back in the day with Tampa Bay and Brad Johnson being a veteran quarterback, more equipped, Jake Delhomme being more equipped to handle that type of situation. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a big mistake by Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan. Maybe it's a game management mistake that he's all too often done in big spots, whether it's Super Bowls as an offensive coordinator, as a head coach, whether it's last week and coming up to halftime. Ultimately, I think the 49ers make the big mistake on the road in the fourth quarter. Jake Elliott field goal, maybe a walk-off, maybe that type of difference. And I got the Eagles winning 24-23.
With just one question. You said easy pass for the Eagles, couldn't have worked out better. What would have been harder than the 49ers in the championship game?
49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo. 49ers with a better quarterback. 49ers with a great quarterback the game would probably be in San Francisco, and the Eagles would really be up against it. The fact that you're down to your third string quarterback is, you know, it's unbelievable. The 49ers are here, to be honest. So from that standpoint, you're always going to face a good team along the way to get to the Super Bowl. This is the best team from a talent perspective, 2 through 53, that the Eagles could have faced. They're doing it at home, and they're doing it with the third string quarterback. It doesn't get easier than that, Jody. It doesn't get easier because you're going to be in this game against a good team. And I bring up those upsets in the past that people always look to. Well, Tampa Bay, they should have beat Tampa Bay. Mike pointed out, that's a whole different ball game. They had the defense and a quarterback who'd been through it all. Even Carolina, again, more equipped to handle this environment. This guy started 7 games. It wasn't supposed to play at all. I pointed out, this guy's Ian Book. That's who he is. This guy's Ian Book. And you don't expect that type of player in this type of situation to come up big. If he does, I'll be here Monday eating crow, Jody. And I think I think Kyle's going to hold his hand and keep him in the football game. But I think the big mistake is going to be from the 49ers.
All right. So, but if you want to compare what the Eagles are doing this year to previous seasons, I will agree with you that this might not have been the toughest path ever taken by a team to get to the Super Bowl. But this is the best matchup they could have. This is the best. This is the second best team in the NFL. It wasn't like they got last week getting a bye. They earned it. They deserved it. Anytime you don't have to play and everybody else has got to go to work and play, that's an advantage. Last week, matching up against the Giants, a team that they were much better than, much more talented than, yes, absolutely an advantage and an easy path. There was no more difficult path than going through San Francisco with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy didn't just come into the lineup this week. He's been in charge for 7 weeks now and won 7 consecutive games.
But my point is, Jody, if I told you before the season, the only obstacle left in the Eagles' path between them and the Super Bowl at Lincoln Financial Field is a team quarterbacked by Brock Purdy, you would take that 100 times out of 100. And this you are going to, but what I'm trying to say is no matter what, you're going to face a good team in a championship game, no matter what. They might have flaws. And this team is a very good team. And I'm probably giving them too much credit by keeping this game this close. Because I have so much respect for the 49ers as a whole, I'm probably leaning a little bit too much that way than I should. You would take it 100 out of 100 times. There has never been a rookie quarterback to win a championship game. And that's rookie quarterbacks that played the entire season. It couldn't be better. Understanding, look, the Houston Texans in the championship game would have been easier, but you can't play the worst team in football. The Chicago Bears, you have to play a good team. So a good team with a rookie quarterback in his 8th start, I don't care if he's 7-0. I'll take it.
All right. And my point is, maybe I'm not making it well. Eagles are in the championship game. What would have been a tougher matchup than the Brock Purdy-led San Francisco 49ers for the Eagles to face in a championship game?
I don't think you're understanding my point. At this stage, it doesn't get easier. At this stage, not.
But John, you also said earlier, if I told you at the beginning of the season, so what time are we picking up the analysis from? Beginning of the season or just this week?
What my point, I don't think you're playing a good team in the championship game. You're playing a really good team. Cincinnati's playing a really good team. Kansas City's playing a really good team. If you've made it through all these hurdles to get to a championship game, you're a good team. So that's baked into it. I'm saying when you're playing a good team, this is the best possible situation. Because even if Jimmy Garoppolo, and I don't like Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit, but even if Jimmy Garoppolo is out there, it would be a tougher road to hoe than Brock Purdy. It doesn't get any easier in this situation than what the Eagles are facing. They will never find. When they won 38-7 in 2018, they had a tougher situation than they're facing right now. Now, things snowballed. Yeah, but you're looking in hindsight. The Vikings were favorite. Jason Kelce told me straight, man, they got some good players. They were the number 1 defense in the NFL. Case Keenum was 3rd in the MVP voting that year. That was a much more difficult situation. The snowball went going down the hill. If it goes down the hill this game, you're going to see a similar situation. That's all I'm saying. Now, hindsight, they blew them out. Obviously, they're probably not going to blow them out because it's tough to blow teams out. I'm not going to predict 38-7 again. But then again, if there is a route in this game, 100% it's the Eagles' way, not the 49ers. If there is a route.
What would you consider a route?
20 plus points.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't think the 49ers will win by 20 plus points this week. That's for sure. All right, J Mac, no, you got to run. Good luck over there, getting over there, and I will see you back here Monday on Birds 365.
Let's do it.
And Johnny
Thanks,
Mac,
Barrett. I see you in the green room.
Big B, Barrett, ready to rock and roll. And don't forget Johnny Mac, part of the postgame show. It's going to be as big as it gets this weekend here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. Barrett Brooks going to join me next for the final hour of Birds 365.